Hello, and welcome to our continued lecture on interpersonal communication. I am your teacher, Professor M, and we are going to continue with the second part of Chapter 1, which discusses the definition of interpersonal communication. When we think of interpersonal communication, we define it as the transactional creation of meaning, either intentionally or unintentionally, within a didactic social relationship. A common way of distinguishing levels of communication is to look at the number of people communicating. When we think of interpersonal communication, it can also be defined as two people in a didactic interaction. For example, a group of communication can be defined as three or more communicating. When we understand this in terms of the debate of intentionality, when it's relevant in communicating and facilitating the exchange of messages, we have to consider the fact that it is extremely important within the communication field, but also in the successful relay and exchange of your ideas, your thoughts, and your feelings. The text mentions that we believe that the sender-oriented explanation of communication misses a great deal of interaction that constructs relationships. Now, when we think about intentionality, it is important for one because in our definition, we specify that interpersonal communication can be intentional or unintentional. So, for instance, when you are sitting in a setting and your arms are crossed, are you tired? Are you hungry? Are you cold? Are you sleepy? Are you comfortable? Are you relaxed? Is this your comfort place? Are you hugging yourself and you're just interlocking your arms? Again, is that intentional or unintentional in the exchange of the communication? So we believe that when people communicate, the process includes messages that they intend to send, as well as messages that they don't intend to send. So when we are thinking of that within the construct of talking about the pillars upon which we identify as our relationship with ourselves, how we'd like to be perceived by others, and how we wish to communicate with others, it's important to know that every instance of your being and what makes up who you are today, not who you were yesterday or who you're going to be tomorrow, but who you are today, is reflective of the totality of what's to come in that communication exchange, as well as what has passed within that communication exchange. Let me explain. When we talk about our environment making up who we are as an individual, our beliefs, our thought process, what we're thinking about, and how it intercepts as noise in the communication process. We had a student in our exercise who is thinking about homework. We had a student who was thinking about communicating with their partner. We had another student who was thinking about communicating or was thinking about during the communication exchange that they were hungry, that they were cold, that they were tired, whether this class would be a good fit for them. We had other people thinking about going back to their home or to their room and resuming what they were doing before they came to class. This, conceptualized as noise, comes into the communication flow, and it does impact, whether albeit intentionally or unintentionally, the flow of communication. So something else to understand is that communication is often intentional and goal-oriented. So when we think about the construct of the personal relationship that we have with ourselves and our goals and our intentions and how we wish to appear and show up in the conversation, we have to understand that that communication has to achieve a goal. So when we think about the exchange of what I wish to convey in doing these lectures, these pre-recorded lectures, is that I want you to have another opportunity to listen and read and understand the digesting of the theories, the rhetoric, the processes, the incredible research around communication. But most importantly, I want you to, without the noise and the distraction, receive the message that I'm presenting to you, which is the information and the teachings of interpersonal communication. That's my goal. That's my goal as your professor. That's my goal as your mentor, as your communications coach. That's my goal as a human being wanting to impart my knowledge to another human being via communication. So when we think about this in perspective of chapter 1 in the book, we must understand that if communication can be unintentional, the intent of the sender is not as important as the possible interpretation of the receiver. The intent of the sender is not as important as the possible interpretation of the receiver. I'm comfortable. Actually, a lot of people find this to be offensive, but it is a comfortable position for me. But do I intend to communicate to you that I'm bored or I'm annoyed or however you perceive this body language that I'm reflecting in this video now? Again, when we think about this receiver orientation, the other side of the relayance of the message, be it verbal, nonverbal, intentional, unintentional, will again play into the communication cycle upon which the receiver will then process, interpret fairly or interpret even incorrectly the message, and then will bounce that back to the sender in their response. So in our view, unintentional communication occurs when communicators mindlessly exchange meaningful behaviors. A mindless exchange occurs when we have little or no awareness of a behavior or what a behavior means. For example, we might not be aware of our tone of voice, which a listener interprets as sarcasm. We might not know that our gesture has an obscene meaning in a different culture. But these behaviors are still meaningful because the meaning comes from the context upon which the behavior occurs, whether that context is an interpersonal relationship or a cross-cultural interaction. So when we think about this, understand that this is super important in understanding the definition of interpersonal communication and the exchange of the sender, receiver, the messenger, and the noise. Let's move on to the next part of our book, which will be a model of interpersonal communication.